Hey, I'm going to show you this really cool transformation that's going on right now of transforming what was previously a lifeless office complex in the high desert city of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's being transformed into a much more hydrated rather than dehydrated oasis, thanks in large part to what's behind me, and I'll show close-ups in just a moment, of this little rain garden transformation that changed what was possible in people's minds. Also going to show you how this is helping control insane floodwaters coming from adjoining properties. Thousands of gallons, tens of thousands of gallons perhaps, and we're going to look at decomposing fungi that is being inoculated in invasive Siberian elm logs to provide bioremediation services, enhancing the soil fertility, and a whole heck of a lot more. And it's thanks to this guy, Reese Baker of Raincatcher here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So keep watching and you're gonna see all this and a whole lot more that I'm not even telling you about. Reese is standing beside the rain garden that he created. It was nothing as sweet as this before. But Reese, can you tell us about the transformation that you made happen here and how that opened the door for you to do a whole heck of a lot more?
Yeah, absolutely, man. We've got 225,000 gallons of water that come from this upper parking lot, and it comes right into this inlet. And when we started this project, there was 2 dead trees and a couple little unhappy shrubs, and it was just a big giant pit full of gravel. And all the asphalt from the years before had accumulated this layer of tar, and the water wouldn't infiltrate into the ground. It would simply evaporate after storms, and it would of course grow our all-time favorite insect, mosquitoes, within about 3 days. So now we have a complete transformation. The water comes in through here. It doesn't just go into a pond, it goes through a whole meandering ecosystem with edible plants, with grasses, with 9-foot deep root systems that allow water to infiltrate much faster, trees for shade, edible plants, and then most importantly, we have a slew of these Siberian elm trees that everybody in Santa Fe hates. And we have plugged those with saprophytic decomposer fungi, and the roots of the fungi, the mycelium, they grow into the log and then they start to spread out through the ecosystem, and they have specialized enzymes that will eat a lot of the toxins that are coming into this rain garden. And what's even neater about this is this was a pilot project that I ended up funding for the board of directors for this whole complex so that they could see what green stormwater infrastructure can do for properties. And they fell in love with it, and hence, we have been able to do a bunch more projects here, and now we have a great show site, not only for my company, but for Brad's vision.
So Reese, can you give me a tour of this rain garden, and when did you put this in?
Yeah, absolutely. This was installed in 2017, and I think the most special part about this whole project was that we designed it and we did a bunch of the rock work, but then we had the freshman biology class from Santa Fe High School come over here with their teacher, and we taught them how to plant it, and we went over all the different concepts that a rain garden can, provide for our ecosystems and for our whole civilization. They loved it. They all were into it. They had shovels in their hand, and it just makes me so happy to see that, So we need to involve our kids and get them excited about the potentials that we have for our future in this. So if you're looking at this rain garden, you guys might notice we've got a whole bunch of green vegetation. One of our concepts here is to try to plant edible species. For instance, this western sand cherry. This is edible to humans. It's also edible to the wildlife. These are dried. That's actually probably pretty delicious. Then we've got native wildflowers here that are growing. We've got flowers here called Jupiter's beard. This is echinacea. One of the neat things that we had here was Xerces Society came and photographed a bunch of the native bees that are actually endangered in New Mexico. And they were all over our rain garden, and that brings something that we need so desperately in our world right now. And then I think maybe the most exciting part of all this, and I'm really glad we got to see this, this is a Siberian elm, non-native invasive tree. It has been inoculated.
The log of the tree.
The log of the tree. This tree is dead, and this has been plugged with oyster mushrooms. Oyster mushrooms are what they call white rot fungi. They break down dead wood. And the way they do that is with these special enzymes. And what's neat here, you guys, is you can see this little white stuff here. This is the the roots of the fungi, the mycelium, starting to colonize and grow out here. And this is going to provide and produce oyster mushrooms in the very near future. And I have lots of documentation for you there, man.
Sweet.
And then if we kind of sneak down through here a little bit further, it hasn't rained in New Mexico in 2 weeks. And in some of these areas of this rain garden, you can see that the soil is still completely saturated. And I think one of the most important things that we need to think about when it comes to rain gardens is that we have to run all the stormwater that's coming off streets and parking lots through biology, because that's the only way we're going to be able to purify it. So not only are we recharging aquifers by doing this, but we're putting clean water back into the aquifers.
Thanks to the cleaning of all this life, how it's cleaning that water coming off the parking lot.
Absolutely. We've got phytoremediation, remediation with plants, and then we have mycoremediation, remediation using fungi. So we're actually using 2 different kingdoms of life to clean our water now.
Right on.
Very exciting. And for everybody's information, we are not irrigating this. This does not have supplemental irrigation that we're using from the wells or from any other water sources. And
so it's only getting rainfall and the runoff from the parking lot, is that, and adjoining properties.
And we're here standing next to wax currants, golden currants, service berries, New Mexico privets. We have a really beautiful Arizona sycamore here. Brad is standing underneath a really beautiful crabapple tree. These berries will stay all season, and we'll see birds and crows and things on them in the winter. They've got a food source. So it's super exciting to see all this happening.
Sweet. So stormwater comes under that coyote fence into the structure, and Reese, why don't you take it away from there?
Yeah, you guys, this is one of my the most exciting things that I think we've been able to do, because we have neighboring properties to this complex that have absolutely no water harvesting on their sites. Huge surface areas. All that water was draining onto this side of our property and damaging it on every single rainstorm. So what we've done is we've been able to take that water, and instead of having it damage all of our property, we're bringing that in as a resource to the front of the complex where everybody drives in and where we need that aesthetic enhancement. So this first Zuni-bowl concept here is more of a sediment trap. All that water that's carrying dirt and rock and sediment that's flowing from that side of the property, that gets to drop out here, so that the water that's going to move down through this canal system, which is very similar to the Acquía systems of New Mexico, which is one of the ways that we design this. Lots of natural meanders, very, very small drops in grade, so we can get that water to move as slow as possible through the ecosystem. And all the dirt has been dropped out here. So now all we have is the floating debris, these little leaves that you see here, so the water can flow, it picks that up, and it starts to move down through the front of our building. And I would definitely like to point out to everybody that we are never going to use 4-inch pipes again to try to channel water from one side of a sidewalk or from one side to another area, because the 4-inch pipe tends to clog up with this leaf matter and the twigs and the sticks. And so we're going to update this. Hopefully we can do an update on your whole show, and we'll have a clear path for that water to flow under here, so that that floating debris can move through the system really easily.
So you're going to keep the width and the depth of the channel as it is pre-pipe and continue it under the sidewalk, so there's no constriction. Is that the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very important, because we had on occasion where this will fill up and a lot of the water will come and outlet and go right back down onto the parking lot, which is what we are not wanting it to do. And so anyway, small, you learn, you build from your successes and you learn from your mistakes. And so now we've got this water flowing through here once again, and this is actually a really good example, Brad, of debris getting caught on 4-inch pipes. This is for any designer and any installation company. These pipes are not sufficient to transport water. 2 4-inch pipes do not equal 1 8-inch pipe when it comes to sediment. But this is our next situation here. And what I want everybody to know is that these Zuni-bowl concepts that you see moving through these 3 different spots, these were big giant holes in the ground that were lined with gravel. And there was no water going to them. All the roof water from all these buildings is flowing to the other side. So all the roof water was going that way. All the neighbors' water was coming to this side, and that side, the east side of this building, was completely destroyed every time it rained. So now these old pits have been transformed into rain gardens. And you will notice that we have the grasses. As we were speaking about earlier, grass roots really help water infiltration rates. Then we have planted all these trees next to these rain gardens so that their roots can tap into that, so that we can eventually get some of these trees completely off of any necessary irrigation.
And Reese, just before we continue, when we started off looking at the rain garden in the center, was it 2017 you put that in? Was that right?
Yes.
And so when the vegetation looks a lot younger here and more newly planted, when did you start putting in the vegetation here?
Everything that you guys see in this rain garden was planted this spring.
Oh, so really
new.
So
it's brand new. The
Okay.
trees, the grasses, the logs, all the rock work was just finished.
So this is really going to fill out and flesh out with that vegetation as it grows.
Absolutely. And we're going to be planting more and more different species in this over time.
Nice.
Right now it's just the grasses and the Siberian logs, elm logs. And so one thing that I'd like to point out, and we're going to look at this again on the roadside verge rain gardens, we're trying to slow water down as in as many places as possible. So our first infiltration basin is here. Then we set the grade. This all is able to flow and pour over. And as the water starts to move through here, it's all kicked to the left. And then it flows here, and it's all kicked to the right. We're using my main man, Bill Zdyke's induced meandering concept within these rain gardens, so that the more that we can get water to do what it wants to naturally and meander, the longer retention time we have in the environment. And that's what we need to be able to infiltrate as much as possible during a storm event. And so this one will fill up.
I like your nice lip there, so this will all pool up to a nice depth before overflowing.
This is what we call a weir, and this sets the depth that you can harvest water. And so this is about 14 inches deep. So this whole thing has to fill up all the way to this point before it can then overflow. Overflows into this basin. We have another weir here set, another 6 to 8 inches. It has to pool here before it can then move through. And then of course, we have the same concept here. We had a little bit more space, so this is a much larger garden, but we have a pinch point in here. So this will all come in here and start to fill this up, and the water has to go through this small little gap before it can exit this area. And then it has to go all...
So it backs up momentarily, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then it all has to go to this side and meander its way back into this side. And then of course, the entire basin is now set at this weir level.
Nice.
So it has to fill up 14 inches through this whole entire basin before it can move on.
Awesome. And I notice something, it seems another transformation happened. Like there's all this gravel that like predated your work, but what's with the wood chips? Was that here before too, the wood chip mulch?
The wood chip mulch was definitely not here. And I think this adds kind of a unique dynamic design component. And at the same time, organic mulch spread thick enough can cut evaporation by 50%. Organic mulch allows for all the saprophytic fungi to grow, the decomposer fungi. And decomposer fungi literally take wood and turn it into the biomolecules, things like proteins, things like fats, and allow the plants to have access to things they would have never had. The gravel gets really hot, the wood chips don't. The gravel doesn't retain moisture, the wood chips do. So there's this fantastic regenerative concept to using an organic mulch. So, and over time, my goal is with this whole complex to get all of this to be organic mulch. And we will soon have a forest in here that is nice and shaded with microclimates, enhanced bird habitat, pollinator habitat. Trees are actually redistributors of water that's deeper into the shallower water aquifers, so that these shrubs and these different plants can have access to that moisture. So we've got a whole giant ecological plan going here that's regenerative in all aspects.
Awesome.
Very exciting.
So we're still in the young stages of all this.
Yeah. And so in this case, we just wanted to try something new. Let's do a half moon media luna concept that I learned from my main man, Craig Spungholtz. And this water pours in, fills this all up, and overflows in these two little overflow points that are set maybe just a couple inches lower. So we have this really dynamic three-way waterfall when this is all coming. So we're turning stormwater that was making a huge problem and turning it into a beautiful addition to a commercial project. And so then once again, we have this design concept where we have a media luna that goes that way, and then we have a media luna that goes this way, just to kind of help that water move as slow as possible through here. This is really great, you guys. Some of you might have heard Brad mention a three-way valve. Well, this is our three-way valve here. We have our water inlet coming down. It lands into this Zuni-bowl structure, which we sort of call an energy dissipation device. So when the water drops off of something that's about 18 inches and it lands, it has to churn inside of this area, and that sort of confuses the water's directionality. And so when it gets to this point, we have the ability to send some of it back down to the street where we have more rain gardens and another pooling area. And we also have the ability to send it perpendicular 90 degrees to the flow so that we can get that back out into the front of the building again. And so this is a really exciting concept. By using the weir concept again, we're able to set these grades so that we can take one large flow and split it into two smaller flows, and therefore spreading that water out even further.
Nice. And what kind of flows do you see coming through here in a big flow event? Because as I look here to the east, we've got all these rooftops, we've got this massive parking lot, and it's all dumping into this, for the most part, lifeless, stone-lined stormwater basin. But from seeing along this wall, it looks like the wall's been pushed a lot by the water, and it looks to me like water even tops over the wall onto this property. What have you seen?
Yeah, it definitely does. Unfortunately, this standard detention basin here is grossly undersized for the size of the surface area that it's draining.
And or of the surface, the area that it's receiving water from.
Exactly. And unfortunately, the pool side of this basin is not abutted to this wall. So the low point actually puts all this water against our wall. And so what we've seen out here is incredible amounts of stormwater flowing through this channel. And we actually had to expand the channel to 9 feet here to be able to help that stormwater move through. And it's unfortunate, because if this property was maintaining their stormwater as they normally would in a situation that encompasses the law, because you're supposed to be able to detain all the stormwater on your property, that's not the case here. So we had to line this channel with all this 6 to 8 inch angular rock to ensure that we just didn't have this whole entire thing swept away by a giant river. If we were only dealing with the water that was coming off of the roofs of our buildings, we could do a much more elegant thing here, different kind of design. We don't need to have the whole entire thing rock lined. We could actually just come in and put little check dams, little one rock dams, expose a lot more of this to the earth, plant a little bit more, and do a completely different overhaul as far as the design goes. But until we get this solved, we can't do too much more here. And so I'm hoping in phase 2, we're going to be working with these folks. We're going to be using their water, doing something cool. And in the meantime, maybe this channel can become a little bit more unique, a little bit more creative.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And how would the water in a big flow event, before you did your work, would the stormwater ever reach the base of the walls of the buildings on the property that you share?
They definitely would. These buildings are sequentially stepped, and this building here, unfortunately, is at the bottom of the watershed. And so this entire unit was completely flooded and damaged, and they had to do all the mold remediation. They had to redo all the walls. They had to pull out all the floors. They had to redo the whole thing. And unfortunately, the association does not pay for repairs that are done inside the units. So all this flooding and all this damage wasn't something that could be compensated for them through the board of directors and the association, and that's a shame. So we had to ensure that this water was going to be able to move through this system. You know, in all cases, I don't want to drain any water, but in this case we have to.
Yeah. Site-specific design. Well, let's go a little bit further downstream and see what you're doing with the water that moves down this channel.
We are in a little bit of an unfortunate situation here. We're at the outlet of this commercial-sized detention basin, and as you can see, this hill is higher than it is over there. So this whole pond will fill up, and then all the water starts to run right against the backside of this retaining wall here. You can see clearly how much stuff is coming through and building up. So in a big storm event, the water backs up all, you know, this high all the way back there, and then it starts to flow over and under this wall onto our property. And then we do our best to capture what flows onto that side into a Zuni-bowl over here. But then what I think might be the most comical thing I've ever seen in my life is here we have a 4-inch pipe that is draining a 2-acre commercial property, and it used to drain right onto the street. But what do? We find problems and we turn them into the solution. And so now whatever's going to come through that 4-inch pipe is going to come right into this rain garden here, and we call this a roadside verge urban forest created through rainwater alone. And so now, if there's not enough water running down this street to do much for our rain garden here, there's certainly enough water coming from this, overflowing and filling this rain garden, even in small storm events.
So you've got two inputs of stormwater from the pipe, the overflow above the surface from that detention basin, and you've got the street gutter water coming on down here.
Absolutely. These are the little treats of urban stormwater that we have all over cities, all over the world. And this is the kind of thing that I want to be able to capture and keep out of our freshwater ecosystems.
All right, so the road is slightly crowned or raised in the middle, so water drains to the street gutter on either side. Water then moves down the gutter, and here, instead of just being wasted going to the storm drain, it's captured via this curb cut, and we've got this amazing rain garden and life. But Reese, can you tell us a little bit more of what you transformed from? Can you tell us a little bit more about this dominant paradigm, unfortunately, we have in our society?
Yeah, this is real frustrating. This is basically what our city permits as far as new construction on the roadside. So this roadside verge has this incredible potential.
And when you say verge, you mean that unpaved area between sidewalk and curb?
Yeah, so that's a really unique area, and you will see that everywhere you look along streets in most cases. And so this is a completely wasted space. We've filled it up with gravel. We're on the south side.
You didn't.
Yeah,
we
didn't. They did it. Yeah. The proverbial they. So this is what's hard to imagine, you guys, is I came out here in August with my thermometer, my ground sensing laser thermometer, and this was 153 degrees. And what is that doing? That is baking the soil. That is killing all soil life. That is pulling all moisture that is underneath these rocks out of the ground, and we are losing that to the atmosphere. Whereas, why not create a beautiful urban forest by utilizing that rainwater? And so the water runs off the street. We deflect it using a deflector through a curb cut, drops out all this sediment and stuff that's flowing down the road. And then that water is capable of moving down through this roadside verge. But this is a unique roadside verge because every 2 inches in drop, we have what we call a mycosponge, which happens to be these dead elm trees again with a little...
The logs.
Yes, sir. And with these little overflow channels right here. And so this whole thing has to fill up with 2 inches of water, overflows. And then what does it do? It has to overflow to the other side of the verge, right here. pocketing and pooling water around this tree. Then it flows and goes to the other side again. So what we've basically done by using these dead logs, of course they are also inoculated with these decomposer fungi, we have created an induced meander to ensure that this water moves through this roadside verge as slow as possible. Because if we didn't do that, and we just left a channel right here next to the curb here, then the water is just going to flow right down this area as fast as possible. We're not going to get any of that important infiltration and that retention time in the environment, so that we can really soak the ground. We can grow this fungal mycelium, and these trees have access to thousands of gallons of water a year. So it's super exciting to see how this works.
For more on all this and a whole heck of a lot more, be sure to check out my website, harvestingrainwater.com, and check out the full color editions of my books, Rainwater Harvesting for Drylands and Beyond, which you can get a deep discount direct from me at my website, harvestingrainwater.com. And also be sure to check out the show notes, because I'm going to link to Reese Baker's company, Raincatcher, and many more great resources that you can link to, and to be inspired and informed on how you can create such transformations where you live, work, and play, simply by using what's freely at hand. Plant that rain and grow abundance.